Okay, I believe I'm recording now. Let me begin. I'm not sure I'm seeing this window in the middle of my screen here, but hopefully it won't show up in the final recording. Having some issues here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so today I'll be talking about what I'm calling Punishing Mothers. It is a comparative study of motherhood and prisons. So, why focus on mothers? It has been over 9 years since the death of Trayvon Martin and the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. Nearly a decade of activism and protesting has highlighted many of the inequities and insufficiencies in the criminal justice system. These include policing to sentencing to prisons, but a lot of these have been focused on men's experiences. And I think in order to get a more comprehensive understanding of what reform would look like, you need to focus on women, and specific aspects of that would be motherhood as well. I've identified three general types um, of relationships that I'll be focusing on that would define motherhood: incarcerated mothers, mothers of children with incarcerated fathers, and mothers of incarcerated children. This is all in the goal of answering what are the effects of different approaches legal systems have in reacting to crime on motherhood. So, to personify the punitive approach, I chose the US system. And as an example of the rehabilitative approach, I chose Norway. I think these are two of the most popular representations of each system. And the following analysis will juxtapose these criminal justice systems in hoping to answer the listed question above. I think this research reveals that the rehabilitative legal system, although not perfect, is superior to the punitive legal system in supporting and protecting mothers. Studying the experiences of mothers and their involvement in the criminal justice system will produce a list of reforms that I will give at the end that provide a more comprehensive vision of criminal justice reform. So, to begin, we'll be focusing on incarcerated mothers. The U.S. overall fails to assist mothers in their relationships with their children. So, when a woman gives birth in prison, their child is removed from them and placed in the custody of a family member or in foster care. This decision is detrimental to the emotional and mental health of both the mother and the child. This separation can lead to less successful peer relationships and impaired ability to deal with stressful situations for infants as they grow up. More mothers often face psychological trauma and increased rates of recidivism. The United States also fails to assist mothers with their older children. Parenting programs in prisons are drastically underfunded and, in turn, serve only a fraction of the incarcerated mothers that express interest in them. This low number of incarcerated women to men also puts them at a disadvantage in accessing these programs due to the fact that there are fewer women's correctional facilities that offer these programs. In comparison to the US, and the Norwegian prison system, which takes a rehabilitative approach, can seem radical. Although, as I said, the system is not perfect, there are policies in place that address the issues present in the American system. In Norway, mothers can serve part of their sentence in what's called mother and child houses, which are separate from the prison, not exclusive to offenders, and supervised by independent bodies with no connection with the respective penitentiary institution. It is not considered suitable for children to be in prison in Norway, and therefore prisons do not have, quote, mothers units as they do in the United States. Some mothers with short sentences and young children can spend their entire sentence in these alternative institutions. Norway's philosophy on sentencing and approaches to drug use are also more beneficial to mothers, as prison sentences are reserved for the most heinous crimes. Norwegian courts look to divert drug offenders into rehabilitative drug programs in which mothers can likely have more contact with their children. The overall outlook on drug use and how the state should respond to it is more conducive to healthy mother-child relationships in Norway than in the United States. So moving on, we'll now focus on mothers of children with incarcerated fathers. With a large number of incarcerated men in the United States, many mothers are left to parent children on their own. This aspect of the conversation regarding criminal justice reform is often spoken about, but is typically reframed in the concept of the relationship between the child and the father. Although this relationship is important to talk about, the added depth of the experience of these mothers can provide insight into how welfare systems and programs can overlap to supplement the absence of the father. Uh, Gender and racial inequality in the United States are reproduced in the criminal justice system and can be seen in the empirical reality of mothers who have children with incarcerated fathers. The incarceration of fathers burdens mothers and produces gender inequality by discouraging shared responsibility for children, home, and the household economy. And the incarceration of the father um, puts their children at overall risk and puts mothers in a position to do more paid and unpaid work. An intersectional analysis reveals that Black women may have to do more than when their father is incarcerated. There's a multitude of economic barriers Black women face anyway, including chronic unemployment of men in their lives, their own positioning in the labor market, and their involvement in means-tested public assistance programs. These extra hurdles are not only detrimental to the mother, but compound the negative effects of the children as mothers spend less time in the home while fathers are incarcerated. This glimpse into the experience of mothers of children with incarcerated fathers reveals how the criminal justice system in the United States is not solely about crime, but can be indicative of the state of gender and racial inequality in a society. As I previously mentioned, Norway's system is has less harsh sentencing, and the minimal use of prisons means mothers are with their partner more often. Mothers of incarcerated children now. So another aspect of how the criminal justice affect mother is the institutionalization of their children. There wasn't a ton of research on this, so I had to combine a few different outlooks on what constitutes mothers with incarcerated children. In the United States, I focus more on mothers of incarcerated children who are a bit older. Their children typically have children of their own, but in Norway, there's much more research on younger children. So, research in the United States shows that financial disadvantages, dwindling social connections, and lousy parenting evaluations, as well as the burden of care of the grandchildren of the incarcerated sons, are some of the mediating factors of the relationship between mothers and their incarcerated children. Excuse me. As the state chooses to limit the freedoms of offenders to the highest degree possible in order to fulfill its mission of punishment, the United States does not erase the responsibilities that correspond with these adult child offenders. These responsibilities must still be met. They frequently fall on the backs of women, and particularly their mothers. Mothers with incarcerated children experience extreme financial hardship as a result of incarcerated loved ones, while utilizing unique coping strategies such as assuming care, taking responsibility, maintaining family relationships, and budget control. These extra responsibilities not only exacerbate gender inequality in the United States by increasing the domestic work of mothers, but it also makes racial inequality worse. The reality in Norway seems to be in stark contrast to the United States. Their approach to antisocial and criminal behavior not only helps reduce those behaviors in their children, but can be recredited in helping um, reduce criminal behaviors in early adulthood, therefore reducing the adult prison population. In the 1990s, the Norwegian government decided to fund and implement decentralized community interventions in order to address antisocial and criminal behavior in children. These interventions keep children in the homes and provide social and therapeutic support to mothers. Like the punitive system of the United States, the rehabilitative system in Norway sees juvenile crime as an opportunity to strengthen families. Although the United States has attempted to move in this direction, they have been reluctant to implement these strategies nationwide. As juvenile crime is typically handled at the state and municipal levels, there is very little attention to standards and how to react to juvenile crime from a national perspective. This lack of national standard that supports decentralized community approaches to juvenile crime not only is detrimental to children, but is detrimental to the mothers. Mothers are at the will of the state governments in many cases in terms of whether or not their families receive proper support when their children are incarcerated. Another key point in this discussion is that in some states in the U.S., children are still incarcerated. In Norway, almost all children remain in the home for therapeutic treatment. So, as previously stated, The rehabilitative approach is not perfect, pardon me, but there's three reforms that stick out immediately. First, the federal government must begin funding nurse home visit programs for first-time low-income mothers. This may not seem like it directly has to do anything with the criminal justice system, but the results beg to differ. According to one study, women visited by nurses had fewer subsequent pregnancies and births, longer relationships with current partners, fewer months on welfare, and food stamps. The results for children were also beneficial. They were more likely to be enrolled in formal out of home care between 2 and 4.5 years of age, demonstrated higher intellectual functioning and receptive vocabulary scores, and most importantly, fewer behavior problems in the borderline or clinical range. This is an easy step that the federal government can do in attempting to not only try to curb juvenile crime, but work on the life course development of the children most likely to end up in prison. This will also reduce the amount of mothers with children in prison. The second reform must be made is ending the war on drugs. The War on Drugs is a campaign by the United States federal government that was aimed at the illegal drug trade and illegal drug use. It began in the Nixon administration, and I believe it is safe to say that this campaign is an absolute and utter failure. Not only are states legalizing and decriminalizing a variety of drugs in the wake of public support, we are also in the midst of an opioid pandemic that was fueled by the legal pharmaceutical industry peddling drugs with profits in mind instead of patient health. There's a strong correlation between the war on drugs and the boom of the United States prison population. According to one study, one-fifth of incarcerated people are serving time for a drug charge, and another 1.15 million are in probation and parole for drug-related offenses. Not only would this reform um, actually help people who are drug users, it would mean less mothers and less fathers are going to jail. So finally, mandatory minimums should be abolished. Mandatory minimums prevent judges from sentencing individuals based on their actual need. These hurt mothers in particular because these minimums mean they have more domestic work to do if their partners are in prison, or they are away from their families longer if they themselves are going to prison. So these steps are only the beginning. The punitive system of the criminal justice system in the United States will need a massive overhaul if the well-being of mothers, particularly those who are poor and black, will have a fair chance at reaching their full potential. The rehabilitative Norwegian model is not perfect, but it offers valuable insights on how the U.S. system can be changed. If we are to strengthen communities, families, and mothers, these reforms need to be taken seriously and implemented as soon as possible. Thank you.